Hey guys, so tonight we're going to journey far, far away from your warm, soft bed, past the comforting hum of your modern world, and plunge headfirst into an empire you've likely never heard of. Forget the romanticized tales of gleaming swords and valiant knights. History's often a grittier, stranger beast. We're going to talk about a civilization built not on gold or conquest, but on the shimmering dance of light and shadow, on the enigmatic power of the looking glass. This wasn't some whimsical fantasy, but a real, harsh, and utterly unique existence. Before we truly begin our descent into their world, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't, and drop a comment below telling me where you're listening from and what time it is. Alright? Find that cozy spot, pull the blankets up to your chin, and let's unravel the lost empire that worshipped mirrors and shadows. Close your eyes for a moment, and then open them, not to the familiar glow of your screen, but to the harsh, unfiltered brilliance of a twin-sunned desert world. Feel the fine, ever-present grit of sand between your toes, even through the worn leather of your sandals, a constant reminder of the barren, unforgiving landscape that stretches endlessly around you. The air, thin and dry, rasps in your throat with every breath, tasting faintly of dust and distant, unseen minerals. You're a gatherer, a hunter of the scarce, a survivor in a land that yields nothing easily. Your muscles ache, a deep, persistent throb from days spent under the relentless gaze of the twin suns, scouring the desolate plains for sustenance. Your skin is leathered, tanned almost black by years of exposure, your eyes narrowed to permanent slits against the glare. This is your life, a relentless cycle of seeking, enduring, and hoping to see another dawn. Today, though, is different. You trek towards the oasis of whispers, a place rumored to hold water even in the deepest droughts, a place of ancient, weather-beaten stones said to be imbued with strange properties. The journey is long, each step kicking up puffs of ochre dust that cling to your sweat-soaked tunic. The silence is profound, broken only by the distant, mournful cry of a desert hawk circling high above, a tiny speck against the vast, pale sky. As you draw closer, the oasis doesn't reveal itself with lush greenery, but with a sudden, startling glint. A shimmer, unnatural and arresting, catches your eye. You approach cautiously, your hand instinctively going to the bone knife at your belt. The glint emanates from a shallow pool, nestled amongst ancient, crumbling rocks. The water itself isn't remarkable, murky, still, disturbed only by the occasional ripple of a passing insect. But it's not the water that holds your gaze. It's what lies beneath it, something so profoundly alien to your experience that your mind struggles to process it. Embedded within the bedrock, exposed by some ancient tremor or erosion, is a slab of obsidian, polished to an impossible, almost liquid sheen. It's unlike any stone you've ever seen, smoother than river glass, darker than the deepest night. Yet somehow, paradoxically, it seems to absorb the light of the twin suns, only to give it back with an eerie, perfect fidelity. You kneel at the edge of the pool, your shadow stretching long and distorted behind you, a dark, ephemeral twin. As you lean closer, drawn by an irresistible curiosity, you see it. Your face, not a painting, not a crude carving, but you. The precise lines of your brow, the weary sag beneath your eyes, the individual strands of hair escaping your dusty binds. It's unsettling, deeply, profoundly unsettling. You reach out, your fingers trembling slightly, to touch the image, and your reflection ripples, then snaps back into perfect focus as your hand hovers above the smooth, dark stone. This isn't just a pool of water reflecting the sky. This is the world, revealing you to yourself in a way you've never truly experienced. Before this, you knew yourself through the rough touch of your own skin, the sensation of your body moving, the sound of your own voice. Other people saw you, of course, but their gaze was always filtered through their own perceptions, their own biases. This, however, is pure, unadulterated self. The stone is utterly indifferent, a silent, perfect witness. It doesn't judge. It doesn't interpret. It simply shows a shiver, not of cold, but of a profound, dawning understanding, runs down your spine. You gaze into the dark mirror, and 1,000 questions flood your mind. Questions you never knew you had. Who are you? What is this self that stares back? Is it merely flesh and bone, or is there something more? Is this your spirit, momentarily trapped, or a glimpse into a deeper truth of existence? The suns beat down, the desert wind whispers, but all sounds fade as you are lost in the silent dialogue with your own image. You spend hours there, lost in contemplation. You observe your movements, the slight twitch of a muscle, the subtle shift of emotion across your face. You make expressions, test poses, trying to understand this alien entity that is both you and not you. It's a profound, almost spiritual experience. You begin to notice the play of light on its surface, the way the twin suns create a double highlight, the elongated shadows that crawl across its face as the day progresses. The mirror isn't just reflecting you, it's reflecting the entire world, filtered and focused. A distilled truth as the first sun begins its slow descent, painting the sky in fiery oranges and deep purples. You notice something else, the shadows. They stretch, lengthen, become more pronounced, almost taking on a life of their own. Your own shadow, a vast, looming presence behind you, seems to dance and writhe with a newfound energy. An entity separate yet intrinsically linked to you. You raise your hand, and your shadow mirrors the gesture, a silent, powerful affirmation of your presence. You become aware of the subtle variations, the nuanced gradations of darkness, the crisp edges where light meets shadow, the blurred softness where they merge. This isn't just an absence of light. It's a distinct, tangible presence, a counterpoint to the dazzling brilliance of the suns. The desert, which once felt hostile and empty, now feels alive with a hidden language of light and dark. The polished obsidian, the still water, the elongated shadows of dusk, they all seem to speak of a profound duality, a fundamental balance that underpins existence. You realize this isn't just a discovery, it's a revelation, a new way of seeing, a new way of understanding. And in that moment, as the first stars begin to prickle through the darkening sky, you know that your life and the lives of those around you will never be the same. You gather a small shard of polished obsidian, carefully prizing it from the earth. Its cool, smooth surface, a comforting weight in your palm, a tangible link to this transformative experience. The journey back to your encampment, you'll walk not just with your feet, but with a new awareness, a new vision, carrying the seeds of an empire that will eventually span centuries. The desert, once a silent adversary, has just revealed its most profound secret, and you, unwitting pioneer, have just stepped across a threshold. From a world of simple survival into a universe of mirrored truths and dancing shadows. Segment 2, Architects of Illusion. The revelation at the oasis of whispers spread through your nomadic clan like wildfire, though not without suspicion and fear. You, the discoverer, became a figure of awe and apprehension. Imagine the initial skepticism, the furrowed brows, the elders shaking their heads, their ancient wisdom rooted in the tangible, the edible, the immediate. Yet, the undeniable truth of the polished obsidian, the way it held a perfect, immutable reflection, slowly chipped away at their resistance. You demonstrated its power, showing them their own faces, the subtle nuances they'd never truly perceived. You spoke of the shadows, not as mere absences, but as vital counterparts to light, defining and shaping the very world. Slowly, painstakingly, the clan's perception shifted. No longer content to merely survive in the world, they began to understand they were part of it, intimately connected to its fundamental forces. This understanding began to reshape everything, starting with where and how you lived. Your people had always lived in temporary encampments, tents of woven animal hide and sturdy branches, easily dismantled and re-erected. But how could you truly honor the reflection, the shadow, in such fleeting structures? The answer, you came to realize, was permanence. Not just permanence of structure, but permanence of intent. You begin to observe the sun's path with a meticulousness you never knew you possessed. You track the moon's arc, the movement of stars, the way light filters through the desert's occasional geological formations. You learn to read the subtle changes in shadow length and density throughout the day, how they define and reshape the landscape. This nascent science, born of spiritual insight, becomes the bedrock of your new architecture. Asterisk. Imagine standing on a windswept plateau, the twin suns beginning their ascent, painting the eastern horizon in hues of rose and gold. You're no longer just a gatherer. You are an architect, guided by intuition and observation. You trace lines in the sand with your bare foot, envisioning walls that won't just provide shelter, but will interact with light and shadow. The first structures are crude, built from local sandstone, but they are oriented with purpose. Imagine the sheer physical labor, hauling massive blocks of stone, shaping them with rudimentary tools, your hands raw and bleeding, your back screaming in protest. The air is thick with the dust of stone and sweat, the rhythmic clang of hammer on chisel anew. Insistent song in the desert air. Your early buildings aren't just walls and roofs. They are stages for the cosmic ballet. You discover that angles matter. A wall facing directly east will catch the full, blinding fury of the rising sun, creating a long, sharp shadow behind it. A wall angled just so, however, can diffuse that light, guiding it into a courtyard or across a polished surface. You begin to incorporate openings, not just for ventilation, but for portals of light. Imagine circular apertures cut into thick stone that cast perfect, circular pools of sunlight onto the floor at specific times of day, or long, narrow slits that send thin blades of light slicing through the interior, moving like slow, golden snakes as the day progresses. You're driven by a fervent desire to sculpt light, to carve out spaces that speak of its sacred nature. You experiment with materials. The naturally polished obsidian, though scarce, becomes highly prized. Walls are plastered with a fine, light-colored clay that brightens the interior, allowing the shadows to stand out in stark relief. Floors are often packed earth, smoothed and darkened, designed to absorb excess glare and provide a rich canvas for the dancing shadows. The most innovative designs, however, involve water. You develop intricate systems of shallow pools and channels, not just for practical irrigation, but for reflection. Imagine a central courtyard, open to the sky, with a wide, shallow basin of water at its heart. As the sun reaches its zenith, the water's surface becomes a vast, shimmering mirror, reflecting the sky, the clouds, and even the surrounding walls, doubling the light, intensifying the visual experience. The smallest ripple on the water's surface sends waves of distortion across the reflected image, a reminder of life's ephemeral nature, a constant dance between order and chaos. But the real magic happens indoors. You devise rooms or chambers dedicated to the specific interplay of light and shadow. Imagine stepping from the searing outdoor glare into a cool, dim chamber. Your eyes adjust slowly, and you begin to perceive the subtle nuances. Here, a single, strategically placed opening might funnel a narrow beam of sunlight, catching dust motes in its golden path, illuminating a specific polished obsidian slab on the wall. The beam, a living entity, shifts and crawls throughout the day, tracing slow, deliberate patterns across the stone. You might spend hours in such a chamber, meditating on the movement of light, seeing it as a metaphor for the flow of existence, the journey of the soul. In other chambers, the emphasis is on shadow. You build rooms with minimal openings, where the light is deliberately muted, filtered through heavy, dark cloths or intricate lattice of carved wood. Here, the shadows become the dominant feature. Imagine walls designed with subtle indentations and protrusions, creating a complex tapestry of shade and subtle relief. You learn to appreciate the depth and texture of darkness, the way it can obscure, conceal, but also define. A single, small flame in such a room can cast colossal, dancing shadows on the walls, transforming the space into a realm of shifting giants and whispered secrets. You learn to read the stories in these shadows, seeing them as the unwritten narratives of the unseen world, the spirit world, the realm of ancestors. The very structure of the settlements began to reflect this philosophy. Buildings weren't laid out in haphazard clusters. They were arranged in deliberate patterns, creating channels for light and shadow. Main thoroughfares might be wide and open, designed to be flooded with sunlight, while side alleys and residential areas might be narrower, perpetually cloaked in cool, comforting shade. The city itself became a living mirror, a complex interplay of illumination and obscurity. Even domestic life was influenced. Imagine your own home, carved from the desert rock, its entrance facing west to catch the gentle, softening light of the setting sun. Inside, a small, hand-polished obsidian disc might be set into a wall, acting as a personal reflection point, a daily reminder of the self. During the heat of the day, heavy woven mats would be drawn across windows, plunging rooms into a cool, profound darkness. A respite not just from the heat, but from the overwhelming glare, allowing for quiet contemplation of the inner self. You and your people become masters of thermal mass, understanding instinctively how stone absorbs and releases heat. Thick walls keep interiors cool during the day and warm at night. But beyond the practical, there's a spiritual dimension to it. The cool darkness of a chamber is seen as a embrace of the shadow aspect of existence, a necessary balance to the fiery brilliance of the light. The construction of these early cities is a testament to raw will and a burgeoning spiritual conviction. Each stone laid, each wall erected, each aperture carved is an act of devotion. Your hands, once skilled in tracking game, now learn the precision of the mason, the foresight of the engineer. You teach others, passing on the burgeoning knowledge of how to manipulate light and sculpt shadow. The language itself begins to change, incorporating new words for different qualities of light, new descriptors for the textures of shadow. You begin to understand that an empire isn't just built with power and armies, but with ideas, with beliefs that become etched into the very stones of its cities. And as the first permanent settlements rise from the desert floor, an intricate dance of light and darkness, you know this is just the beginning. The architects of illusion have laid the groundwork for a world unlike any other. A world where the very fabric of reality is woven from the interplay of what is seen and what is unseen. Now, shift your perspective from the sweeping grandeur of cities to the intimate details of daily life, to the very fabric that clothed the people and the art that adorned their homes. Imagine a civilization where every object, every garment, every act is infused with the profound reverence for mirrors and shadows. You wake in a cool, dimly lit chamber, the first sliver of dawnlight just beginning to peek through a narrow slit in the stone wall. A precise, golden blade cutting across the packed earth floor. The air is still, carrying the faint scent of dried herbs and the cool mineral tang of ancient stone. You rise, your body accustomed to the early hours, and move with a quiet grace born of living in shadowed spaces. Your clothing, far from being purely utilitarian, is a testament to the shadow weaver's art. You reach for your tunic, woven from the coarse but surprisingly soft fibers of a desert plant. It is not plain. Observe its subtle patterns, intricate geometrics created by varying the weave. Some areas tightly packed to absorb light, appearing darker, others looser, catching the light and shimmering faintly. You learn to see clothing as a second skin, a mobile canvas for the interplay of light and shadow. Imagine the dyes, not the vibrant, clashing hues of other cultures, but a sophisticated palette of muted tones. Deep indigos, rich umbers, charcoal grays, and soft creams dominate. These are colors that allow shadows to truly speak, to create depth and dimension. You might wear a deep indigo robe, its folds creating rivers of ever-changing darkness, accented with narrow bands of pale, almost reflective, thread woven in intricate patterns. These patterns aren't just decorative. They are symbols, glyphs, representing the duality of existence, the balance of the seen and unseen. Consider the accessories. No heavy gold or ostentatious jewels. Instead, finely polished obsidian discs, small and smooth, are sewn onto garments or worn as pendants. These aren't crude mirrors. They are perfect miniature reflections designed to catch a glint of light, to reflect a fragmented image of the world around you, a constant, personal reminder of the sacred nature of reflection. You might wear a belt adorned with dozens of these tiny discs, each one catching and scattering light as you move, creating a soft, ethereal shimmer that follows you like a halo. But the true artistry, the heart of the shadow weavers, lay in their manipulation of textiles and light. Imagine women and men, for this art was not gender-specific, gathered in large, airy courtyards, their looms clacking rhythmically. They don't just weave cloth, they weave light. Some master weavers specialize in creating fabrics with threads that have been treated with a subtle mineral dust, giving them a faint phosphorescence, allowing them to glow softly in near darkness. Picture a ceremonial cloak, dark as night, yet subtly alive with these glowing threads outlining ancient symbols that seem to float ethereally in the gloom. Then there are the artists who create the shadow plays. This is not simple puppetry. It is a profound, meditative art form. Imagine a large, smooth wall made of a light-colored, finely polished clay. In front of it, a lone artist, draped in dark, unadorned robes, manipulates intricate, multi-layered cutouts crafted from thin sheets of metal or wood. A single, focused source of light, perhaps a carefully tended flame, or a beam of sunlight filtered through a precisely shaped aperture, casts the shadows of these cutouts onto the wall. You sit, mesmerized, as the artist's hands, agile and knowing, orchestrate a silent drama. The shadows aren't flat, they have depth. Some cutouts are placed closer to the light source, creating vast, looming shapes, while others are farther away, appearing smaller, sharper. The artist moves them, rotates them, bringing them closer or farther from the light, making their shadows grow and shrink, blur and sharpen. A tiny, bird-like cutout might suddenly soar to enormous proportions, its wings beating silently across the vast canvas of the wall before shrinking back to a delicate speck, dissolving into the background. The stories told through these shadow plays are profound, tales of creation, of the journey of the soul, of the struggle between light and darkness within each individual. There are no words, only the silent, evocative dance of forms. The audience watches, their faces rapt, their minds filled with the interpretations only shadows can provoke. A single, stylized figure might represent the seeker, moving through a labyrinth of shifting shapes that symbolize trials and tribulations. The play culminates in a moment of perfect balance, where light and shadow meet in a harmonious embrace, before slowly fading back into the deep, comforting gloom. This is not just entertainment. It is spiritual instruction, a visual sermon, a communal meditation. Think of the children learning this art. They begin with simple hand shadows, their small fingers forming crude animals against a sunlit wall. As they grow, they graduate to intricate paper cutouts, then to more complex, multi-layered metal designs. They learn not just the mechanics of shadow, but its philosophy. They learn patience, observation, and the profound power of suggestion. A simple curve can evoke sorrow, a sharp angle, aggression. They learn to feel the shadows, to understand their emotional resonance, even in everyday objects. The shadow weaver's art is evident. Imagine clay pottery, not merely painted, but textured in such a way that it plays with light. A bowl might have a finely ribbed surface on one side, catching highlights, and a smooth, unglazed surface on the other, absorbing light, creating a subtle, shifting pattern as you turn it in your hand. Utensils might have handles inlaid with small, dark, polished stones, designed to reflect the user's hand as they eat. The homes of the people are a living gallery of this art. Walls are adorned not with murals, but with carefully arranged surfaces, a highly polished stone slab here, a rough, light-absorbing textile there, small, portable mirrors crafted from obsidian or polished bronze are common household items used not just for grooming, but for daily meditation, for catching a specific beam of sunlight and directing it onto a favored object, animating it with a fleeting glow. The very concept of beauty in this culture is tied to the interplay of light and shadow. A face is considered beautiful not just for its symmetry, but for the way light and shadow play across its contours, highlighting its strengths, softening its imperfections. A gesture is graceful, not just in its movement, but in the way it sculpts the shadow it casts. This art permeates every facet of life, from the sacred to the mundane. It is a constant, subtle reminder of the empire's core belief that reality is not static, that it is a dynamic interaction between what is visible and what is hidden, between the brilliance of truth and the enigmatic depths of the unseen. The shadow weavers are not just artists. They are philosophers, spiritual guides, weaving the very essence of their world into the tangible and the ephemeral, ensuring that the empire's unique vision is reflected in every fiber, every surface, every fleeting shadow. You, living in this world, are constantly immersed in this visual poetry, your perception honed to see the profound in the ordinary, the sacred in the mundane. You stand at the threshold of the Sun Temple, not as an observer, but as a participant. Feel the cool, smooth stone beneath your bare feet, a stark contrast to the rough, sun-baked earth outside. The air inside is different, too cooler, heavier, carrying the faint, intoxicating scent of ancient incense and polished minerals. This isn't a grand, towering structure reaching for the sky. Its majesty is internal, a testament to intricate design and profound purpose. The exterior is relatively unadorned, a series of low, sweeping arches and massive, unyielding stone blocks, weathered by centuries of desert winds. But as you step inside, the world shifts. The first thing that strikes you is the light, or rather, its careful manipulation. You're not hit with a blinding glare, but a soft, pervasive glow that seems to emanate from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Your eyes adjust, straining to discern the source, and then you see them. The grand mirrors. These aren't simple looking glasses. They are monumental, polished slabs of obsidian, some as tall as a man, others vast, circular discs embedded in the walls and floor, all painstakingly crafted and maintained over generations. Their surfaces are so perfectly smooth, so utterly devoid of imperfection, that they seem to drink in the ambient light and then re-emit it with a profound, almost mystical purity. Imagine walking deeper into the temple's central chamber, your footsteps echoing softly on the polished floor. The walls are not adorned with carvings or paintings, but with these mirrors, arranged in deliberate geometric patterns. Some are set at precise angles, catching beams of sunlight that stream through cleverly positioned apertures high in the dome, then redirecting them, bouncing them across the chamber, illuminating specific altars or sacred symbols etched into the stone. You see your own reflection in a dozen different facets, fractured and reassembled, a constant reminder of your multifaceted existence within the grand cosmic order. At the very heart of the temple, beneath the central dome, lies the most sacred of all, the Great Mirror. It is a vast, circular pool of perfectly still, purified water, surrounded by a low wall of polished black stone. This isn't ordinary water. It is consecrated, infused with rare desert salts and herbs, designed to hold reflections with unparalleled clarity. Above it, precisely aligned with the zenith of the suns, is an open oculus, a circular hole in the dome that allows a single, focused beam of sunlight to descend directly onto the water's surface at specific, sacred times of the day. You have witnessed the zenith ritual many times. You recall the hushed anticipation, the reverent silence that descends upon the assembled congregation. The priests, cloaked in robes of deep indigo and charcoal, their faces serene and focused, move with a deliberate, almost ceremonial slowness. As the twin suns climb higher, their combined light begins to converge, a single, brilliant shaft of pure energy descending towards the temple floor. The air crackles with an almost palpable energy, and then it happens. The beam strikes the Great Mirror, not a diffuse glow, but a solid column of pure light plunging into the water. The surface doesn't just reflect it, it seems to absorb it, holding it, then throwing it back upwards, diffused and softened, illuminating the entire dome with a breathtaking, ethereal brilliance. In that moment, standing within that sacred space, bathed in the reflected light of the heavens, you feel an overwhelming sense of connection, a profound oneness with the cosmos. It's as if the divine presence itself has descended, not as a thunderous voice or a fiery vision, but as the quiet, pervasive essence of pure light, perfectly reflected. The purpose of the Sun Temple isn't just worship. It's a living observatory, a mechanism for understanding the divine order through light. Priests spend lifetimes studying the subtle shifts of the sun's path, the way the light interacts with the mirrors, the precise timing of celestial events. They track the solstices and equinoxes, the rare eclipses, all through the lens of the temple's mirrored surfaces. Each reflected angle, each shifting shadow, is seen as a message, a cryptic revelation from the greater cosmic intelligence. Imagine the feeling of awe during the rare lunar eclipse, when the temple is plunged into a profound, almost terrifying darkness. The mirrors, usually vibrant with reflected light, become abysses of blackness, reflecting nothing but the deepest void. This isn't a moment of fear, however, but of solemn introspection, a contemplation of the impermanence of light, the dominance of shadow, and the cyclical nature of existence. The priests guide the congregation through chants and meditations, honoring the shadow aspect of the divine, understanding that darkness is not an enemy, but a necessary complement to light.
The Sun Temple also houses smaller, more personal reflection chambers. Imagine entering one of these, a small, circular room with a single, perfectly polished obsidian mirror embedded in the far wall. A narrow opening in the ceiling allows a single, focused beam of light to strike the mirror, reflecting it back onto the opposite wall, creating a circular pool of pure illumination. You sit before this, not to gaze at your own reflection, but to meditate on the light itself. To empty your mind, to allow the pure, undistorted energy of the sun to wash over you, to cleanse and purify your thoughts. You might spend hours in this state, feeling your consciousness expand, dissolving the boundaries between yourself and the endless flow of cosmic energy. The echoes in the Sun Temple are not just acoustic, they are spiritual. The chants of the priests, the soft rustle of their robes, the faint murmur of the congregation, all sounds seem to be absorbed and subtly amplified by the polished surfaces, creating an enveloping symphony of reverence. The very air seems to vibrate with centuries of devotion, the accumulated prayers and meditations of generations. Even outside the formal rituals, the temple serves as a center for learning and contemplation. Scribes, guided by the priests, record the precise measurements of light and shadow, the intricate patterns of reflection, preserving this sacred knowledge on finely polished stone tablets. These records aren't just scientific data, they are prophecies, divine messages, interpreted by the most learned of the priesthood. The construction itself is a marvel of ancient engineering. How were such massive obsidian slabs polished to perfection? Generations of artisans dedicated their lives to this craft, using fine desert sands, specialized mineral pastes, and endless hours of painstaking labor. The result is a surface so flawless that it seems to transcend its material form, becoming a portal to another dimension, a window into the divine. As you step out of the temple, back into the harsh glare of the desert, the world seems almost crude in comparison. Yet the experience lingers. You carry with you the profound sense of calm, the quiet understanding of your place in the universe, the subtle resonance of the reflected light that has touched your very soul. The Sun Temple is not just a building, it is the heart of the empire, a beacon of enlightened understanding, a physical manifestation of their deepest spiritual truths, where the divine is glimpsed not in abstract concepts, but in the tangible, undeniable, awe-inspiring beauty of a perfectly reflected beam of light. To understand the very fabric of this empire, you must understand the priesthood, the keepers of the unseen. These are not merely religious figures. They are the intellectual, spiritual, and often political backbone of the entire civilization. Their authority isn't derived from brute force or inherited titles, but from their profound, almost intimate understanding of the sacred dance between light and shadow. Imagine their training, a path of rigorous discipline and esoteric knowledge that begins in childhood and culminates in a profound transformation. You might have been chosen, a child with an unusual sensitivity to light, a natural inclination to observe the subtle shifts of shadow. Perhaps you were found staring intently into a polished water basin, mesmerized by your own shifting reflection, or spending hours tracing the intricate patterns cast by a window lattice. Your parents, recognizing the signs, would have presented you to the high priests, not with sadness, but with a quiet pride, knowing you were destined for a life of unparalleled purpose. Your journey begins in the cloistered courtyards of the lesser temples, away from the bustling city. The initial training is harsh. You learn to fast, to meditate for hours in dimly lit chambers, focusing solely on a single flickering flame, observing its reflection in a small obsidian disc. You learn to control your breath, to quiet your mind, to empty yourself of all extraneous thought. The objective is not just spiritual purity, but heightened perception, an ability to see beyond the obvious, to perceive the subtle energies that permeate the world. Physical discipline is equally rigorous. You learn to move with silence and precision, to stand perfectly still for extended periods, becoming one with the shadows. You learn to work with your hands, polishing obsidian shards until they gleam like liquid night, grinding rare minerals into pastes, meticulously crafting the lenses and filters that will manipulate light in future rituals. Your hands, once soft, become calloused, strong, and exceptionally sensitive to texture and temperature. But the true essence of your training lies in the study of light and shadow. You learn the precise angles of the sun's paths, the specific qualities of light at different times of day and different seasons. You learn about refraction, reflection, absorption. You are taught to read shadows, the length, the density, the sharpness of their edges, the subtle shifts in their contours. A long, crisp shadow might signify truth and clarity, while a blurred, wavering shadow could indicate deception or impending change. You learn to discern the shadow signatures of individuals, understanding that each person casts a unique reflection of their inner self into the world. Imagine long nights spent in a special observatory, its ceiling open to the vast, star-dusted sky. Here you study the celestial mirrors, the moon, the distant planets, the constellations, not just as points of light, but as distant reflections of a greater cosmic order. You learn to chart their movements, to predict eclipses, to understand the subtle gravitational tugs that influence the tides of the desert's hidden aquifers. This isn't astrology as simple fortune-telling. It's a profound cosmology, where the universe is a grand, interconnected system of light and shadow, each element influencing the other. As you progress, you delve into the esoteric texts, ancient scrolls of treated animal hide or carefully inscribed stone tablets, containing generations of accumulated wisdom. These texts are not read in the conventional sense. They are meditated upon. You might spend days contemplating a single glyph, a diagram depicting the interaction of light and matter, allowing its meaning to unfold within your mind, not through rational thought, but through intuitive understanding. The high priests, the most revered of the keepers, are living embodiments of this knowledge. They move with an almost supernatural grace, their eyes possessing a depth and stillness that suggests they see worlds beyond the obvious. Their robes, woven with the finest phosphorescent threads, seem to shimmer and glow in low light, making them appear as beings of pure spirit. They don't speak in loud pronouncements but in quiet, resonant tones, their words often layered with metaphor and symbolism, requiring deep contemplation. Their duties are vast. They preside over all major rituals from births to deaths, guiding the soul's journey from the reflected light of the physical world to the unseen shadows of the afterlife. They are the arbiters of justice, observing the shadow signature of individuals during tribunals, discerning truth from falsehood not just from words, but from the subtle shifts in reflected light around a person, the telltale blurring of their shadow when they lie. Imagine the pressure, knowing that your every nuance, your every subtle hesitation, is being read and interpreted by eyes trained to perceive the unseen. They also serve as advisors to the secular leaders, if any exist. Their counsel is sought on matters of war and peace, agriculture and trade, because their understanding of the cosmic balance is believed to extend to the temporal realm. A high priest might advise against a specific military campaign, not because of strategic weakness, but because the celestial omens as revealed in the sacred mirrors, indicate an imbalance in the forces of light and shadow, foretelling ill fortune. The keepers of the unseen are responsible for maintaining the grand mirrors in the Sun Temple, ensuring their flawless condition, their precise alignment. It is a sacred task, demanding meticulous care and unwavering devotion. Imagine the endless hours spent buffing and polishing, inch by painstaking inch, using ancient tools and secret mineral pastes, until the obsidian surface is so perfect it feels like touching nothingness. Their spiritual power is not about magic in the conventional sense, but about profound observation and understanding. They don't cast spells, they attune themselves to the fundamental energies of the universe. A keeper might stand in a shadowed chamber holding a polished disc, and by focusing their intent, they can influence the subtle flow of atmospheric light, making a single beam penetrate the darkness, illuminating a specific object, revealing its hidden truth. This isn't a parlor trick, it's a manifestation of their deep connection to the forces they worship. But the life of a keeper is not without its burdens. The constant immersion in the esoteric can be isolating. The weight of their knowledge, the responsibility of guiding an entire civilization through the labyrinth of light and shadow, is immense. They live in austerity, dedicating their lives to the pursuit of truth, often sacrificing personal relationships and comforts. Their path is one of relentless self-scrutiny, of continually questioning their own perceptions, of striving for a perfect, unblemished reflection of the divine within themselves. As you mature within the ranks of the priesthood, you realize that the most profound wisdom is not found in grand pronouncements, but in the subtle nuances, the quiet observations. It's in the way a dust mote dances in a sunbeam, the fleeting perfection of a ripple on water, the infinite variations within a single shadow. You become a conduit, a vessel through which the empire's core beliefs are maintained, interpreted, and perpetuated. The keepers of the unseen are the living mirrors of the empire, reflecting its spiritual heart, ensuring its continued journey through the ever-shifting landscape of light and darkness. Their very existence is a testament to the profound power of observation, reflection, and the quiet, persistent pursuit of truth. Imagine a system of governance where laws are not etched into stone tablets for all to see, but are woven into the very fabric of perception, where justice is administered not by explicit decree, but by the subtle interplay of light and shadow. Welcome to the labyrinth of whispers, the unique legal and political heart of the empire. This isn't a government of open debate or public assemblies. It's a more profound, almost psychological approach, designed to expose truth through the subtle tells of reflection. You, as a citizen, learn from an early age that the truth is often revealed in the unseen, in the way a person's shadow flickers, in the clouding of their reflection. The High Council, the supreme governing body, is composed entirely of the most senior keepers of the unseen, those whose perception of light and shadow is considered absolute. They meet not in grand halls, but in specially constructed chambers designed to manipulate illumination with unparalleled precision. Picture a courtroom, if you can call it that. It's a circular chamber, its walls a mosaic of subtly angled, highly polished obsidian and light-absorbing dark stone. There are no benches for a jury, no witness stand in the traditional sense. In the center is a single circular dais, and around it, placed at precise intervals, are several large, perfectly clear pools of water, each acting as a scrying mirror. Above, a complex system of louvers and lenses, operated by junior keepers, allows for the precise control of incoming light, casting specific shifting patterns across the chamber. When an accusation is made, both the accused and the accuser are brought before the council. They stand on the central dais, facing each other, bathed in a constantly shifting array of light patterns. The High Council members sit in the darker recesses of the chamber, their forms barely visible, their eyes, however, are keenly observant, trained to perceive the slightest nuance. The proceedings are quiet, almost ritualistic. There is no impassioned rhetoric, no cross-examination in the modern sense. Instead, questions are posed in a low, resonant tone, often metaphorical, designed to evoke not just a verbal response, but an internal one that manifests physically. Imagine yourself as the accused, perhaps of theft. You stand on that dais, the light suddenly sharpening, throwing your shadow in stark relief behind you. Then just as quickly the light softens, diffusing around you, obscuring your form. You are asked to recount your actions. As you speak, the council watches not just your face but your reflection in the water and your shadow on the wall. Does your reflection waver when you speak of your whereabouts? Does your shadow seem to shrink or expand unnaturally when you deny the accusation? Does the light itself seem to dim slightly around you, betraying a hidden truth? The keepers believe that falsehood creates a disharmony, an imperfection in the individual's energetic field, which then manifests in subtle alterations of their light and shadow signature. A liar's reflection might develop almost imperceptible blurs, a dullness in its usually sharp lines. Their shadow might detach itself from their form momentarily, or appear thinner, less substantial. These are not grand illusions, but minute, almost imperceptible shifts, visible only to eyes trained through decades of intense observation and spiritual discipline. The burden of proof is not on the accuser to demonstrate guilt, but on the accused to maintain perfect clarity of reflection and unwavering shadow integrity. If your reflection remains pristine, your shadow steadfast, even under the most probing questions and the most disorienting light manipulations, you are deemed innocent. But if your reflection clouds, if your shadow flickers, if the light seems to bend unnaturally around you, then the truth of your guilt is self-evident, revealed by the very forces you are supposed to revere. The punishments are often symbolic, reflecting the nature of the crime. For a minor offense like petty theft, you might be condemned to a period of shadow deprivation, confined to a small, windowless cell where no light, no reflection can reach you. This isn't just physical punishment, it's spiritual torment, an enforced separation from the divine interplay of light and shadow that defines existence. For more serious crimes, the punishment might involve public reflection obscuration, where your personal mirror is permanently clouded, or your shadow is symbolically cut, in a public ritual, marking you as an outcast, someone whose inner harmony is broken. The ultimate punishment, reserved for the most heinous offenses against the empire or its sacred beliefs, is dissolution. This involves being banished into the deep desert without any polished obsidian, any reflective surface, any means of seeing your own reflection or interacting with the sacred light, forcing you to exist in a state of profound spiritual blindness, utterly alone in the vast, unforgiving expanse. Political decisions are made with similar methodologies. When conflicts arise between powerful clans or when strategic choices about resource allocation are necessary, the council employs divination through specially designed light chambers. These chambers contain vast arrays of mirrors and lenses that focus and refract the light of the suns and stars onto complex, shifting patterns on the floor and walls. The patterns are believed to be a language, a divine guidance, which the high priests interpret. Imagine the leader of a warring faction being brought into such a chamber, his proposals and intentions projected onto these patterns, his truth discerned not from his words, but from the harmonious or discordant way his essence interacts with the celestial reflections. This is a society built on transparency, not in the sense of open records, but in the sense of inner truth being outwardly manifested. It creates a culture of profound self-awareness and a deep-seated fear of internal dissonance. You are constantly aware that your inner state is potentially visible, reflected in the subtle nuances of your outer manifestation. This fosters a highly disciplined, introspective populace, where self-mastery is paramount. The labyrinth of whispers is also the source of the empire's historical records. Scribes, chosen for their unwavering patience and precise hands, copy the shifting patterns of light and shadow, the interpretations of the council, onto finely polished metal plates. These are not narrative histories, but abstract records, glyphs and symbols representing the patterns of past events, the light and shadow signatures of historical decisions. Learning history in this empire is like learning a complex visual language, deciphering the ancient dance of light that shaped their past. As you navigate this society, you become acutely attuned to your own internal landscape. You learn to cultivate inner calm, to align your intentions with your actions, knowing that any hypocrisy, any internal conflict, will eventually be reflected in the world around you, visible to the discerning eyes of the keepers. The labyrinth of whispers, far from being oppressive, is seen as a profound mechanism for maintaining social harmony, a constant spiritual challenge to live authentically, to strive for a life of perfect, unclouded reflection. It's a testament to an empire that sought to govern not just actions, but the very soul. Forget the clanking armor and crude, heavy swords you might imagine in other ancient wars. In the empire that worshipped mirrors and shadows, warfare was an entirely different, almost ethereal, brutal dance. The military, the blades of reflected light, wasn't just a fighting force. It was an extension of their spiritual beliefs, a disciplined order that leveraged the very essence of light and darkness as weapons. Imagine yourself as a recruit, a young warrior stepping into the training grounds. The air is thick with dust, but also with a strange, almost electric hum. The ground beneath your feet isn't just packed earth. It's dotted with small, circular depressions, each containing a precisely angled obsidian disc. These are your first lessons. You don't learn to wield a heavy sword. You learn to wield light. Your initial training is less about brute strength and more about absolute control and perception. You learn to move with extreme agility, to become a master of your own shadow. Imagine exercises where you must cross a courtyard without casting a discernible shadow, moving in perfect sync with the shifting light, blending into the deeper gloom of a wall, or leaping precisely as a sunbeam passes, making your shadow momentarily disappear beneath your feet. It's a profound study of spatial awareness, of anticipating the sun's relentless march across the sky. Your weapons are unlike any other. They are not designed for direct impact alone. Picture a blade, forged from a dark, incredibly hard metal, its surface polished to a mirror-like sheen along one edge, while the other remains a dull, light-absorbing matte black. This duality is critical. The polished edge is designed not just to cut, but to reflect. When engaged in close combat, a warrior might parry a blow, but simultaneously, with a flick of the wrist, angle their blade to catch the blinding glare of a sun, momentarily dazzling an opponent, disrupting their vision, their balance, their very sense of reality. The burden of proof is not on the accuser to demonstrate guilt, but on the accused to maintain perfect clarity of reflection and unwavering shadow integrity. If your reflection remains pristine, your shadow steadfast, even under the most probing questions and the most disorienting light manipulations, you are deemed innocent. But if your reflection clouds, if your shadow flickers, if the light seems to bend unnaturally around you, then the truth of your guilt is self-evident, revealed by the very forces you are supposed to revere. The punishments are often symbolic, reflecting the nature of the crime. For a minor offense like petty theft, you might be condemned to a period of shadow deprivation, confined to a small, windowless cell where no light, no reflection can reach you. This isn't just physical punishment, it's spiritual torment, an enforced separation from the divine interplay of light and shadow that defines existence. For more serious crimes, the punishment might involve public reflection obscuration, where your personal mirror is permanently clouded, or your shadow is symbolically cut, in a public ritual, marking you as an outcast, someone whose inner harmony is broken. The ultimate punishment, reserved for the most heinous offenses against the empire or its sacred beliefs, is dissolution. This involves being banished into the deep desert without any polished obsidian, any reflective surface, any means of seeing your own reflection or interacting with the sacred light, forcing you to exist in a state of profound spiritual blindness, utterly alone in the vast, unforgiving expanse. Political decisions are made with similar methodologies. When conflicts arise between powerful clans or when strategic choices about resource allocation are necessary, the council employs divination through specially designed light chambers. These chambers contain vast arrays of mirrors and lenses that focus and refract the light of the suns and stars onto complex, shifting patterns on the floor and walls. The patterns are believed to be a language, a divine guidance, which the high priests interpret. Imagine the leader of a warring faction being brought into such a chamber, his proposals and intentions projected onto these patterns, his truth discerned not from his words, but from the harmonious or discordant way his essence interacts with the celestial reflections. This is a society built on transparency, not in the sense of open records, but in the sense of inner truth being outwardly manifested. It creates a culture of profound self-awareness and a deep-seated fear of internal dissonance. You are constantly aware that your inner state is potentially visible, reflected in the subtle nuances of your outer manifestation. This fosters a highly disciplined, introspective populace, where self-mastery is paramount. The labyrinth of whispers is also the source of the empire's historical records. Scribes, chosen for their unwavering patience and precise hands, copy the shifting patterns of light and shadow, the interpretations of the council, onto finely polished metal plates. These are not narrative histories, but abstract records, glyphs and symbols representing the patterns of past events, the light and shadow signatures of historical decisions. Learning history in this empire is like learning a complex visual language, deciphering the ancient dance of light that shaped their past. As you navigate this society, you become acutely attuned to your own internal landscape. You learn to cultivate inner calm, to align your intentions with your actions, knowing that any hypocrisy, any internal conflict, will eventually be reflected in the world around you, visible to the discerning eyes of the keepers. The labyrinth of whispers, far from being oppressive, is seen as a profound mechanism for maintaining social harmony, a constant spiritual challenge to live authentically, to strive for a life of perfect, unclouded reflection. It's a testament to an empire that sought to govern not just actions, but the very soul. Forget the clanking armor and crude, heavy swords you might imagine in other ancient wars. In the empire that worshipped mirrors and shadows, warfare was an entirely different, almost ethereal, brutal dance. The military, the blades of reflected light, wasn't just a fighting force. It was an extension of their spiritual beliefs, a disciplined order that leveraged the very essence of light and darkness as weapons. Imagine yourself as a recruit, a young warrior stepping into the training grounds. The air is thick with dust, but also with a strange, almost electric hum. The ground beneath your feet isn't just packed earth. It's dotted with small, circular depressions, each containing a precisely angled obsidian disc. These are your first lessons. You don't learn to wield a heavy sword, you learn to wield light. Your initial training is less about brute strength and more about absolute control and perception. You learn to move with extreme agility, to become a master of your own shadow. Imagine exercises where you must cross a courtyard without casting a discernible shadow, moving in perfect sync with the shifting light, blending into the deeper gloom of a wall, or leaping precisely as a sunbeam passes, making your shadow momentarily disappear beneath your feet. It's a profound study of spatial awareness, of anticipating the sun's relentless march across the sky. Your weapons are unlike any other. They are not designed for direct impact alone. Picture a blade forged from a dark, incredibly hard metal, its surface polished to a mirror-like sheen along one edge, while the other remains a dull, light-absorbing matte black. This duality is critical. The polished edge is designed not just to cut, but to reflect. When engaged in close combat, a warrior might parry a blow, but simultaneously, with a flick of the wrist, angle their blade to catch the blinding glare of a sun, momentarily dazzling an opponent, disrupting their vision, their balance, their very sense of reality. Then there are the shields. These aren't heavy, impenetrable barriers. Instead, they are often concave discs, crafted from highly polished bronze or tightly woven layers of reflective material. They are light, agile, designed to be used offensively as well as defensively. Imagine a warrior holding such a shield, not just deflecting a physical attack, but using it to capture and redirect a concentrated beam of sunlight directly into an enemy's eyes, turning the battlefield into a disorienting, blinding chaos. Some shields even incorporate an array of smaller, independently swiveling mirrors, allowing for complex, multi-directional light attacks. The armor, too, reflects their philosophy. It's not about covering every inch in heavy metal. Instead, it often consists of layers of dark, light-absorbing fabrics, strategically interspersed with small, polished obsidian plates or reflective scales. The dark fabric helps the warrior blend into shadows, to become almost invisible in low light. The reflective plates, however, are placed at specific angles on shoulders, chest, or forearms, designed to catch and scatter light, making the warrior a flickering, unpredictable target, their form constantly distorting and reforming as they move. Battle tactics are a masterclass in psychological warfare and environmental manipulation. When attacking, the blades of reflected light prefer dawn or dusk, when shadows are long and constantly shifting. Imagine a regiment advancing, their dark forms almost invisible against the deepening gloom, their reflective armor catching the last dying rays of the sun, creating disorienting flashes that appear and disappear like ghosts. They would use the terrain, the natural undulations of the land, the outcroppings of rock, to cast vast, moving shadows that would conceal their movements, allowing them to flank an enemy unseen. Their archers are not just marksmen, they are shadow snipers. Their arrows might be tipped with reflective surfaces, designed to create a momentary flash as they fly, drawing enemy attention, or conversely to be entirely dark, disappearing into the ambient shadows until it's too late. They are trained to target not just the enemy's body, but their eyes, aiming for the reflection, disrupting their sight, using light as a precision weapon. Siege warfare is even more intricate. Imagine a besieged city, its walls constantly bombarded not just by projectiles, but by focused beams of sunlight. Giant, mobile arrays of polished metal sheets, acting as massive mirrors, would be positioned around the city, concentrating the sun's energy onto specific points on the walls, weakening the stone, blinding the defenders on the ramparts. At night, these same arrays might be used to bounce moonlight, creating eerie, shifting illuminations that disorient the defenders, making them question what is real and what is illusion. The most feared military unit is the vanguard of obscurity. These are warriors trained in absolute stealth, cloaked in robes of pure light-absorbing black, their faces painted with dark pigments to eliminate any reflection. They operate under the cover of the deepest night, or in chambers plunged into artificial darkness, navigating solely by touch, sound, and an almost intuitive sense of spatial awareness. Their task is infiltration, sabotage, and assassination, their movements so seamless that they appear to be mere extensions of the shadow itself. Hand-to-hand combat is a brutal ballet of light and dark. A warrior might carry small, highly polished obsidian shards, not for cutting but for throwing. Imagine a flurry of these shards, glinting and scattering light as they fly, creating a disorienting visual distraction before the main attack. They would train to fight with their eyes closed, relying on their other senses, anticipating an opponent's movement from the subtle disturbances in the air, the faint sounds, the vibrations in the ground. The psychological impact on their enemies is immense. To fight an army that uses light to blind you, shadows to conceal them, and reflections to disorient you, is to fight against the very fabric of reality. It's a war not just of attrition but of perception, designed to break the enemy's will, to make them doubt their own senses, to believe they are fighting ghosts. When a battle is won, the victory ritual is a powerful display of their philosophy. Captured enemy banners are brought to a central square, and under the glare of the twin suns, priests use focused mirrors to burn the banners, not with a destructive fire, but with concentrated light, consuming them, turning them to ash, a symbolic obliteration of the enemy's spirit and identity, erasing their reflection from the world. The blades of reflected light are a stark reminder that belief systems, however esoteric, can translate into devastating practical applications. Their discipline, their unique weaponry, and their mastery of environmental manipulation make them a formidable, unsettling force, a testament to an empire that waged war not just with steel, but with the very essence of vision itself. You, observing their drills, their silent movements, their precise control over light, know that facing them on the battlefield would be to face a reality twisted and weaponized, a truly terrifying prospect. Step into the vibrant chaos of the Grand Bazaar, a central artery of the empire's economy, and immediately you are assaulted by a symphony of sights, sounds, and smells utterly alien to your modern experience. The air is thick with the sweet, cloying aroma of exotic spices, the earthy tang of raw textiles, and the metallic scent of countless polished surfaces. This is where the empire's unique worship of mirrors and shadows translates directly into its bustling commerce, making its merchants not just traders, but purveyors of glimmer, purveyors of reflected truth. The Grand Bazaar isn't just a market, it's a dazzling, disorienting landscape of light. Stalls are draped with shimmering silks, their surfaces catching and scattering light in 1,000 different directions. Every vendor, every artisan, displays their wares with an acute awareness of how light interacts with them. Imagine rows of polished obsidian discs, ranging from palm-sized personal reflections to vast, meter-wide slabs, each catching the desert suns and throwing back a myriad of distorted, ethereal images. These aren't just commodities, they are sacred objects, their value determined by the purity of their polish, the depth of their darkness, and the flawlessness of their reflection. You push your way through the throng, the low hum of bartering voices punctuated by the sharp clink of metal against stone, the rustle of exotic fabrics, and the distant, rhythmic tap-tap-tap of a master polisher at work. Your senses are overwhelmed. Everywhere you look, light is manipulated, refracted, absorbed, and reflected. The most prized goods, the empire's unique exports, are the mirrors themselves. There are the black obsidian mirrors, mined from secret desert deposits, painstakingly shaped and polished for generations. Their value is immense, not just for their reflective qualities, but for the inherent purity of the stone, believed to hold the deepest truths. Then there are the bronze mirrors, alloyed with rare, desert-specific minerals to give them an unparalleled sheen. These are often exquisitely etched with subtle, symbolic patterns that only become visible under specific lighting conditions. But it's not just finished mirrors. The merchants also trade in raw, unpolished obsidian shards, prized by artisans in distant lands who seek to replicate the empire's reflective mastery. They sell fine, mineral-infused polishing pastes, secret formulations that give their mirrors their distinctive, flawless surfaces. They trade in special dyes, deep indigos and rich charcoals, favored by those who seek to create textiles that absorb light, that create profound, shifting shadows. Walk past the textile stalls. Here you see merchants displaying rolls of the famous shadow silk, a fabric so finely woven and dyed that it seems to absorb all light, becoming almost a living shadow itself. These silks are highly sought after by foreign dignitaries and occultists who believe they hold mystical properties, or by those who simply wish to disappear into the deepest gloom. Conversely, you see sunweave linen, a fabric woven with subtly reflective threads, designed to shimmer and glimmer in even the slightest light, making the wearer seem to glow with an inner radiance. These textiles are not merely clothes. They are portable light and shadow art, conveying status, profession, and spiritual alignment. Beyond the mirrors and textiles, the empire trades in the instruments of light manipulation. Imagine stalls filled with exquisitely crafted lenses, ground from rare desert crystals, designed to focus sunlight with extreme precision. You see intricate arrays of prisms, capable of splitting light into its constituent colors, creating dazzling, ephemeral rainbows on the dusty ground. There are portable shadow screens, made from finely perforated metal or woven reeds, designed to cast complex, symbolic patterns when held against a light source. These are not just toys, they are tools for ritual, for meditation, for art, coveted by scholars and spiritualists across the known world. The merchants themselves are master communicators, their language as layered and nuanced as the light they trade. They speak not just of price, but of purity, of clarity, of the truth revealed by a reflection. They understand the psychology of perception, knowing how to present their wares in the most flattering light, literally. A merchant selling a personal obsidian mirror might not tell you how much it costs, but how much truth it can reveal, how perfectly it will capture your soul's reflection. Foreign traders, often from distant, more practical empires, arrive with their own goods, sturdy metals, exotic timbers, rare foodstuffs. They are often bewildered by the local emphasis on reflection and shadow, finding it strange and impractical. They might scoff at the idea of paying a king's ransom for a perfectly polished black stone, when they could buy a crude metal mirror for a fraction of the price. But they cannot deny the profound demand for the empire's unique wares, recognizing the spiritual and artistic value that others place upon them. The market itself is regulated by a guild of reflection appraisers. These are individuals, often junior keepers of the unseen, who possess an uncanny ability to judge the quality of any reflective surface or light-manipulating object. Imagine them moving through the bazaar, their eyes sharp and discerning, examining a mirror with a careful, almost surgical precision, assessing its purity, its flawlessness, its capacity to hold a true reflection. Their word is law, and their pronouncements can make or break a merchant's reputation. A mirror deemed clouded, or imperfect, by a reflection appraiser might be unsellable, its spiritual value diminished. Beyond the tangible goods, the empire also trades in knowledge. Scholars from distant lands come to learn the secrets of their unique astronomy, their advanced understanding of optics, their methods of light manipulation. They are willing to pay handsomely for this esoteric knowledge, recognizing its potential for both scientific and spiritual advancement. As the suns begin to dip towards the horizon, casting long, distorted shadows across the bazaar, the atmosphere shifts. The reflected light softens, becoming warmer, more ethereal. The shimmer of fabrics takes on a deeper, richer hue. Bargaining continues, but with a more subdued, almost contemplative tone. The merchants of glimmer, having spent a day in the relentless dance of light, now embrace the coming shadows, packing away their precious wares, knowing that the night will bring a different kind of commerce, a different kind of reflection. The bazaar, having been a stage for dazzling brilliance, slowly begins its transformation into a realm of profound, enveloping darkness, awaiting the return of the suns, and the resumption of the shimmering trade. Imagine the empire, not in its daily grind, but in its exuberant, profound celebration. The festivals of dichotomy are not merely holidays. They are visceral, immersive experiences designed to celebrate the fundamental balance of light and shadow, life and death, the seen and the unseen. As a citizen, you prepare for these festivals for weeks. your anticipation building with each passing day, knowing that the mundane will momentarily dissolve into a breathtaking display of spiritual devotion and communal joy. The most significant of these is the festival of Zenith and Nadir, marking the summer solstice, Zenith, and winter solstice, Nadir. The Zenith festival, celebrated under the relentless, glorious gaze of the twin suns, is a riot of reflected light. Imagine the main squares of the cities, meticulously cleaned and prepared, transformed into vast open-air temples. Every reflective surface, every polished stone, every carefully placed mirror, is brought out and angled to catch and amplify the sun's brilliance. You wake before dawn on the day of Zenith. The air is cool but filled with an electric hum of excitement. You dress in your finest, most shimmering garments, perhaps a tunic woven with sunweave linen, its threads glinting with 1,000 tiny reflections, or a ceremonial robe adorned with dozens of polished obsidian discs that sparkle and dance with every movement. Your face might be painted with reflective mineral pigments, creating intricate, dazzling patterns that catch the light. As the suns ascend, the celebrations begin. Priests, cloaked in robes of pure white, their faces painted with shimmering silver, lead the processions. They carry large, exquisitely crafted mirrors, some mounted on long poles, others carried like sacred shields. As they move through the streets, they deliberately angle these mirrors, directing beams of sunlight into the cheering crowds. Imagine yourself bathed in these pure, hot shafts of light, feeling it cleanse and invigorate you, a tangible blessing from the heavens. The streets become rivers of moving light, the reflections bouncing off walls, off garments, off the polished faces of the ecstatic crowd. Music is not merely sound, it's a rhythm of light. Percussion instruments, made from polished metals and resonant woods, reverberate through the air, their surfaces glinting with every strike. Flutes and wind instruments, their bodies adorned with reflective materials, add ethereal, shimmering notes. Dancers perform intricate choreographies, their movements designed to create a dazzling play of light and shadow on their bodies, their reflective garments catching and releasing brilliance with every turn and leap. The Zenith festival culminates at midday, when the twin suns are directly overhead. In the central temple squares, colossal arrays of mirrors are set up, converging the sunlight into magnificent, shimmering columns that rise into the sky, creating pillars of pure light that seem to pierce the heavens. You stand among thousands, your head tilted back, your eyes squinting against the overwhelming radiance, feeling a profound sense of unity, of shared enlightenment, as if the entire city has been lifted into the divine embrace of light. Food is shared, light, nourishing fare, sun-dried fruits, sweet cakes made with desert honey, and water infused with reflective minerals, believed to purify the body and soul. Then, 6 months later, comes the Nadir festival, the antithesis and complement to Zenith, celebrated during the longest night of the winter solstice. This is a festival of profound introspection, of embracing the darkness, the unseen, the ancestral spirits. The mood is solemn, reverent, yet equally profound. You dress in your deepest, most light-absorbing garments, perhaps a cloak of shadow silk, its folds swallowing all ambient light, making you seem to merge with the encroaching gloom. Your face might be painted with matte black pigments, designed to absorb light, to create a sense of profound absence, of self-effacement before the mysteries of the night. As dusk falls, the city begins its transformation. All artificial lights are extinguished, plunging the streets into a profound, almost absolute darkness. The grand mirrors in the temple are shrouded in black cloths. The only illumination comes from carefully tended, flickering oil lamps, casting long, dancing shadows, and from the pale, ethereal glow of the moon and stars, amplified by smaller, precisely angled mirrors held by the priests. The processions are quiet, almost silent, moving through the shadowed streets like spectral beings. Priests, cloaked in robes of pure black, their faces painted with light-absorbing pigments, carry torches that emit only a dull, smoky glow, ensuring that the shadows remain the dominant feature. They lead the congregation in soft, rhythmic chants, honoring the spirits of the ancestors, meditating on the mysteries of death and rebirth. The Nadir festival culminates at the deepest point of the night, when the moon is at its highest and the stars are most brilliant. In special, darkened chambers within the temples, the priests perform ancient shadow plays, using intricate cutouts and a single flickering flame to cast vast, moving shadows on the walls. These plays tell stories of the void, of the journey through the underworld, of the seeds of light hidden within the deepest darkness. You sit in profound silence, your mind open to the metaphorical narratives, feeling a deep connection to the eternal cycles of creation and dissolution. Rites of passage for youth are often held during Nadir, marking their journey from the innocent light of childhood into the complex shadows of adulthood. Young men and women are taken into deep, dark caves, left alone for a night with only a small, unpolished obsidian shard, tasked with confronting their inner fears, their hidden selves, before emerging at dawn, symbolically reborn into the light. Both festivals feature communal meals, but for Nadir the food is often symbolic of scarcity and hidden sustenance. Dark breads, bitter herbs, and thick, warming stews eaten in near silence, by the faint glow of oil lamps. Other, smaller festivals dot the year, marking significant celestial events, rare eclipses, or periods of seasonal change. Each reinforces the empire's dualistic worldview, the profound understanding that neither light nor shadow can exist without the other, that they are two sides of the same sacred coin. As you experience these festivals, you feel the profound ebb and flow of cosmic energy, the pulse of your empire, deeply intertwined with the rhythms of the heavens. You are not just a spectator. You are a living part of this ancient, awe-inspiring dance, your very being resonating with the brilliance of light and the mystery of shadow, a testament to a civilization that found its divinity not in idols, but in the ethereal, ever-present forces of the visible and the unseen. Every civilization, no matter how enlightened, casts its own long shadow. In an empire founded on the worship of light and reflection, the darker aspects of human nature naturally found expression in twisted interpretations of their sacred tenets. This is the realm of the whispers of the dark mirror, the forbidden practices, the taboos, the terrifying perversions of their profound spiritual philosophy. You, as a citizen, live with a constant, subtle awareness of these dangers, a quiet understanding that the very tools of enlightenment can, in corrupted hands, become instruments of profound malevolence. The core belief in the importance of one's reflection, the visible manifestation of the soul, meant that any distortion or manipulation of that reflection was seen as a grave spiritual crime. Imagine a cult that rose in the empire's early days, the Clouded Eyes. They believed that true power lay not in the pristine, but in the distorted, in breaking the perfect reflection. They would intentionally etch and scratch their personal obsidian mirrors, defacing their own reflections, believing this would free their spirits from the constraints of the physical self. This wasn't seen as enlightenment, but as an act of profound self-mutilation, an affront to the divine order. The keepers of the unseen hunted them relentlessly, believing their practices spread a spiritual disease, a dissonance that could corrupt the very fabric of society. But far more insidious were the shadow eaters. These individuals, often disgruntled or power-hungry, sought to absorb the shadows of others, believing this would grant them access to their victims' life force, their knowledge, their very essence. They didn't engage in crude vampirism, but in a psychological and spiritual theft. Imagine a darkened chamber, lit by a single carefully controlled flame. The shadow eater would lure a victim into this room, and through hypnotic chants and a complex array of mirrors and light-absorbing cloths, they would attempt to project their victim's shadow onto a specific surface, then ritualistically consume it with their own larger, more dominant shadow. The victim wouldn't die physically but would become profoundly weakened, their spirit diminished, their personality dulled, almost as if a part of them had been literally taken away. Their reflection would appear faint, their shadow almost translucent. This was considered an unspeakable horror, a profound violation of the soul. The punishment, if a shadow eater was caught, was absolute dissolution, a complete eradication from all records and public memory, their mirrors shattered, their name never to be spoken, as if they had never existed. The concept of false reflections also gave rise to deep-seated fears. There were legends of mirror mimics, shadowy entities or individuals who could perfectly imitate another's reflection, but whose true nature was fundamentally corrupt. Imagine seeing a perfect reflection of a loved one in a water basin, only for their shadow to be subtly malformed, or their eyes to hold an unnatural glint, revealing the mimicry. This led to a profound mistrust of perfect illusions, a cultural emphasis on discerning the true reflection from the false image. Taboos surrounding mirrors were numerous. You were never to shatter a mirror intentionally, for it was believed to shatter your own soul, leaving you fragmented and spiritually vulnerable. Never were you to look into a mirror in anger or despair, for it was believed that the mirror would absorb that negativity, only to reflect it back at you, amplifying your suffering. And perhaps the most unsettling, never gaze into a dark, unlit mirror for too long, for it was whispered that the void within it could gaze back, pulling your consciousness into the unseen, leaving your body an empty husk. The cult of the eclipse represented another dark facet. While the official religion revered the eclipse as a profound moment of introspection, this cult worshipped the total absence of light, believing that true divinity lay not in the interplay, but in pure, unadulterated darkness in the void itself. They would conduct rituals in deep, lightless caverns, wearing robes that absorbed every photon, seeking to completely erase their own reflections, to merge with the absolute nothingness. Their practices often involved sensory deprivation, prolonged fasting, and chants designed to dissolve the boundaries of the self. They were seen as dangerous nihilists, attempting to unravel the very fabric of existence, to negate the sacred duality. The keepers of the unseen, while upholding the tenets of light and shadow, also had to constantly guard against these perversions. They developed specific rituals to cleanse spaces corrupted by dark mirror practices, using focused beams of purified light to banish lingering shadows, or consecrated oils to restore the integrity of defaced reflective surfaces. They also became adept at identifying the subtle signs of individuals who were dabbling in forbidden arts. The slight muddiness in their aura, the unnatural stillness in their gaze, the way their shadows seemed to cling too heavily or drift too far. Fear was a potent weapon in the empire. Tales of those who defied the sacred balance, who succumbed to the allure of the dark mirror, were passed down through generations, not just as cautionary tales, but as stark warnings of the profound spiritual consequences. You learned from a young age that the power of reflection, like the power of light itself, demands respect, discipline, and an unwavering commitment to balance. To stray from this path was to invite not just physical punishment, but a terrifying dissolution of the very self, a descent into a spiritual abyss where your reflection would be forever lost, your shadow eternally devoured by the insatiable whispers of the dark mirror. Imagine a culture where history isn't just a collection of dates and names, but a living, breathing tapestry woven from light and shadow, reflected and re-reflected across generations. In the empire that worshipped mirrors and shadows, the past was not merely remembered, it was experienced through the scrutiny of the elder reflections. This was their unique method of record-keeping, a profound ritual that allowed them to literally gaze into the mirrored echoes of time, discerning patterns, prophecies, and the subtle truths of their collective journey. You, as a citizen, understood that the elder reflections were not mere dusty archives. They were vibrant, almost sentient repositories of the past, maintained and interpreted by a specialized caste within the keepers of the unseen, the Chronos priests. These weren't historians in your modern sense. They were seers capable of drawing meaning from the intricate interplay of ancient light patterns. Picture the grand archives, not a library of scrolls, but a vast, sprawling complex of chambers, each one containing an enormous, precisely polished obsidian slab, embedded into the floor or walls. These are the elder reflections. Some are millennia old, their surfaces having witnessed countless sunrises and sunsets, absorbing the ambient light of ages. They are believed to hold a faint, lingering echo of every light and shadow that has ever played across their surface. When a Chronos priest wishes to consult the past, the ritual is elaborate and deeply spiritual. Imagine yourself observing such a process. The chamber is cleared, cleansed with purifying desert herbs, and lit only by a single carefully calibrated light source, perhaps a unique mineral lamp, or a beam of moonlight filtered through a specific lens. The priest, draped in ceremonial robes of deepest indigo, approaches the elder reflection. They don't simply look into it, they prepare it. Using secret techniques and ancient mineral pastes, the priest meticulously cleans and buffs the mirror, not just to remove dust, but to awaken its latent reflective memories. This can take hours, sometimes days, a meditative process designed to attune the priest's consciousness to the mirror's essence. As they work, they chant soft, rhythmic incantations, invoking the spirits of past light, inviting the echoes of time to surface. Then the true scrutiny begins. The priest stands before the polished slab, their eyes fixed on its surface. Slowly, painstakingly, they begin to manipulate the light source. It might be a small, portable lamp, its intensity and angle adjusted with minute precision. Or, in larger chambers, an elaborate system of lenses and prisms will focus a beam of ambient light onto the elder reflection. As the light shifts and dances across the ancient surface, faint patterns begin to emerge. These aren't photographic images, they are subtle, ethereal projections. Imagine a fleeting glimmer of a specific constellation pattern, reflecting a momentous celestial event from centuries past. Or a sudden, sharp, triangular shadow, representing a significant architectural change to a temple. Perhaps a clouding of the mirror's surface in a particular area, signifying a period of internal strife or spiritual dissonance. The priest doesn't just see these patterns, they feel them, interpreting their emotional resonance, their historical significance. Each elder reflection is dedicated to a specific period or theme. One might hold the reflections of foundation, containing the faint echoes of the empire's origins, the first discoveries of obsidian, the initial spiritual awakenings. Another might be the mirror of kings, preserving the subtle light signatures of various rulers, allowing the Chronos priest to discern their character, their true intentions, even their hidden weaknesses, long after their physical forms have returned to dust. The most sensitive and profound of these are the mirrors of prophecy. These are particularly ancient and rare slabs, believed to not only reflect the past, but to subtly hint at future possibilities by revealing recurring patterns, cyclical shifts in light and shadow that foretell coming events. A priest gazing into a mirror of prophecy might discern a faint, repetitive darkening of the reflection, suggesting an approaching period of decline, or a recurring pattern of brilliant light, indicating a coming era of prosperity. These interpretations are never absolute. They are whispers, possibilities, requiring immense wisdom and insight to unravel. The Chronos priests don't write down their historical findings in linear narratives. Instead, they record their interpretations in abstract glyphs and symbolic diagrams, meticulously etching them onto smaller, portable obsidian tablets. These are records of patterns, not facts. To understand their history, you don't read, you learn to see. You learn to decipher the iconography of light and shadow, understanding that a complex arrangement of sharp lines and diffuse glows might represent a period of innovation and expansion, while a tangled web of overlapping shadows could signify a time of political intrigue and confusion. This method of history creates a profound sense of cyclical time. The past isn't truly gone, it merely retreats into the unseen, waiting to be drawn back into the light of the present through the elder reflections. It reinforces the empire's belief in the eternal dance of duality, the constant ebb and flow of cosmic forces. Your own life, you are taught, is but a fleeting flicker in this grand, continuous reflection. The scrutiny of these reflections influences every aspect of governance and daily life. Before undertaking a major project, the High Council consults the Chronos priests, seeking to understand the historical light patterns surrounding similar endeavors. They wish to learn from the echoes of past successes and failures, to ensure their present actions align with the harmonious flow of the cosmic reflection. As you consider this profound way of engaging with time, you realize that for this empire, memory is not a static concept. It is a dynamic, living force, constantly interacting with the present, shaping the future. The scrutiny of the elder reflections is a testament to their unwavering belief that truth, however ancient or fleeting, leaves an indelible mark upon the canvas of existence, waiting to be revealed in the subtle, shimmering depths of a perfectly polished mirror. The empire that worshipped mirrors and shadows, steeped in its unique perception of reality, lived for centuries in relative isolation, its harsh desert borders acting as a natural barrier. But no empire can exist forever in its own reflected world. Inevitably, the time came when the veil of isolation was sundered, and you, as a citizen, experienced the profound, often brutal shock of encountering peoples whose worldview was utterly alien, who saw mirrors as mere tools and shadows as simply the absence of light. Imagine the initial rumors, carried by lone scouts venturing further than ever before into the treacherous fringes of the desert. Whispers of strange figures, not clad in reflective fabrics or light-absorbing silks, but in rough, practical leathers and dull metals. Tales of crude, unpolished weapons, wielded with a blunt force that seemed utterly barbaric to a people who understood the subtle power of redirected light. Then came the first direct encounter. You might have been part of a small trading caravan, venturing out with precious obsidian mirrors and shadow silks, hoping to establish new routes. Instead of the familiar, hushed bartering of your own people, you are met with aggressive demands, with suspicion, with outright confusion. Imagine trying to explain the spiritual significance of a perfectly polished obsidian disc to a hardened warrior who sees it only as a pretty rock, or perhaps a dangerous, distracting glint. The shock was immediate and profound. These outsiders, from the verdant plains or the rugged mountains, had no concept of the sacred dance of light and shadow. They built their homes not to sculpt illumination but for brute shelter. Their art depicted figures and landscapes, not the abstract, symbolic patterns of reflection. They spoke with booming voices, not the nuanced whispers that allowed shadows to speak. Their very existence was a challenge to everything you held sacred. Conflict, of course, was inevitable. Their armies were numerous, their tactics straightforward. Overwhelming force, heavy weaponry, direct assault. Your blades of reflected light, accustomed to dazzling, disorienting, and outmaneuvering, found themselves facing an enemy who seemed impervious to their psychological warfare. Imagine the horror of seeing a warrior charge directly into a focused beam of sunlight, eyes squinted but undeterred, their will unbroken by the light that should have brought them to their knees. Your reflective shields, designed to blind, sometimes merely drew attention, making you a target for their crude, powerful projectiles. The early battles were devastating. Your refined, subtle strategies often failed against their raw, unyielding aggression. The desert, once your ally, became a disadvantage when these outsiders, unfamiliar with its deceptive landscape, simply bludgeoned their way through its challenges. You witnessed your fellow warriors, masters of illusion and stealth, fall to the brutal simplicity of a heavy axe or a blunt arrow. The loss was not just physical, it was a spiritual wound, a challenge to the very efficacy of your beliefs. But you adapt. You learn painfully from your defeats. Your keepers of the unseen, initially bewildered, begin to study these new enemies, their lack of spiritual sensitivity to light and shadow. They discover that while your reflective tactics might not blind them, they can still disorient. Your shadow-weaving techniques, while not inducing fear, can still create confusion, mask movements, and allow for surprise attacks. Your engineers, once solely focused on aesthetic and spiritual light manipulation, begin to adapt their knowledge for defense. Imagine city walls reinforced not just with stone, but with elaborate arrays of fixed mirrors, designed to reflect blinding light into approaching armies at precise moments, giving your archers a precious few seconds to unleash volleys of arrows. They develop new forms of dark smoke, created from burning rare desert plants, which billows forth to create vast light-absorbing clouds, allowing your warriors to move unseen, to disappear and reappear like phantoms. The cultural clash extended beyond the battlefield. When captured, these outsiders often scoffed at your sacred mirrors, using them for mundane tasks or worse, defacing them out of ignorance. Your people in turn struggled to understand their gods of harvest and thunder, their focus on tangible wealth and earthly conquest. The dialogue was fraught with misunderstanding, a chasm of irreconcilable worldviews. Yet there were rare, fragile moments of bridge building. A few foreign scholars, captivated by the empire's advanced understanding of optics and astronomy, sought to learn from your keepers. They marveled at your ability to predict eclipses with uncanny accuracy, to grind lenses with such precision. They saw scientific potential where their own people saw only superstition. And some of your own, particularly the younger generations, became fascinated by the sheer practicality of the outsiders, their emphasis on brute efficiency, their different forms of art and storytelling. However, these were exceptions. The dominant feeling was one of profound disruption. The empire, which had seen its worldview as universal truth, now faced a fundamental challenge to its very foundations. The comfortable certainty of living in a world defined by light and shadow was shattered. The sundering of the veil was not just a historical event, it was a spiritual trauma, forcing the empire to confront its own limitations, its own vulnerabilities, in the face of a world far larger, far more diverse, and far less reflective than it had ever imagined. This initial, brutal contact laid the groundwork for future conflicts, for a desperate struggle not just for territory, but for the very soul of a people defined by their unique perception of reality. The shock of external contact, the brutal clash with cultures that saw the world without the sacred filter of reflection and shadow, sent ripples of profound unease through the very core of your empire. While the keepers of the unseen struggled to interpret these new, unsettling phenomena through their ancient lenses, seeds of discord began to sprout internally, threatening to unravel the delicate harmony that had sustained your civilization for millennia. Imagine the atmosphere in the years following the first major encounters with outsiders. A pervasive anxiety hung in the air, a questioning of fundamental truths. The traditional wisdom of the elder reflections seemed less clear, less absolute, when confronted with the bewildering actions of those who simply did not see. The High Council, composed of the most revered Chronos priests, found their interpretations challenged, their guidance questioned, by a populace increasingly bewildered and disillusioned. The most potent source of discord came from the pragmatists. These were not necessarily outsiders, but often younger, more worldly members of the empire, particularly those from the blades of reflected light who had faced the raw, unyielding force of foreign armies. They argued that the empire's unwavering focus on spiritual light manipulation made them vulnerable in a world dominated by crude, physical power. What good is a perfectly polished mirror, they would argue, when a blunt spear can pierce your heart? They began to advocate for a shift in priorities. Instead of dedicating vast resources to the maintenance of grand mirrors or the intricate rituals of light and shadow, they demanded resources be diverted to weapon development, to practical defenses, to learning the brutal, straightforward tactics of their enemies. Imagine the fiery debates in the rare public gatherings, the pragmatists, their faces hardened by battle, arguing passionately against the serene, measured tones of the keepers. They would point to the fallen, the lost territories, the undeniable evidence that spiritual purity was no shield against iron and steel. This wasn't just a political disagreement, it was a theological crisis. The pragmatists, while not abandoning the reverence for light and shadow entirely, began to suggest that perhaps the interpretation of the sacred texts had been too narrow, too esoteric. They whispered of a need for a more robust reflection, one that acknowledged the darker, more brutal aspects of reality, one that allowed for a pragmatic application of force, even if it meant momentarily obscuring the perfect reflection. This was seen as heresy by many of the elder keepers, a corruption of the sacred tenets. The rise of the Shadow Lords was an even darker manifestation of this discord. These were ambitious, charismatic leaders who, instead of rejecting the traditional beliefs, twisted them for personal power. They argued that the empire's vulnerability stemmed from its over-reliance on light, on the visible, on pure reflection. They preached that true power lay in absolute darkness, in the profound void of the unseen, in the ability to manipulate not just shadows, but the very absence of light. They began to gather followers, teaching them forbidden techniques of shadow projection, of deliberately obscuring their own reflections to appear more formidable, more mysterious. Imagine their rituals, held in deep, lightless caverns, where the only source of illumination was often a single carefully controlled, almost suffocating flame that barely pierced the gloom. They would emphasize the power of fear, of intimidation, of dissolving the self into the anonymity of pure darkness. They saw the empire's traditional reverence for perfect reflection as a weakness, a constant exposure of the inner self. The Shadow Lords, with their emphasis on secrecy and power, appealed to those who felt marginalized, who saw themselves as less than perfect, whose reflections were already clouded by doubt and resentment. The political fabric of the empire, once so seamlessly woven by the unified vision of the keepers, began to fray. Factions formed. Loyalties were divided. Some cities, particularly those closer to the newly revealed borders, began to side with the pragmatists, demanding more autonomy to develop their own defenses and trade relations, often bypassing the traditional council of the High Council. Others, disillusioned by the perceived weakness of the established order, fell under the sway of the Shadow Lords, their citizens embracing the allure of hidden power. The keepers themselves were not immune to these internal struggles. Within their ranks, some quietly began to question their own methodologies, wondering if their interpretations of the elder reflections were indeed sufficient for these unprecedented times. Younger keepers, exposed to the new anxieties, found themselves struggling to reconcile ancient wisdom with brutal new realities. Debates raged, often in hushed, guarded tones, about the nature of divine guidance. Was it static or did it evolve? Were the mirrors reflecting eternal truths, or merely the filtered truths of a specific time? The High Council, for the first time in centuries, found itself in a defensive posture, struggling to maintain its authority, its spiritual legitimacy. Their serene pronouncements, once accepted as undeniable truth, now met with open skepticism and thinly veiled defiance. They attempted to reassert their control through traditional rituals, through elaborate light and shadow displays, but the magic seemed diminished, its power lessened by the pervasive doubt. This internal fracturing was perhaps more dangerous than any external threat. It corroded trust, bred suspicion, and undermined the very unity that had allowed the empire to flourish. The seeds of discord, once tiny, almost imperceptible, had taken root deep within the collective psyche, threatening to split the empire that worshipped mirrors and shadows into warring factions, each claiming a different interpretation of the sacred light, each casting its own increasingly divergent shadow. The harmonious dance of duality was giving way to a dissonant clash, hinting at a far greater catastrophe yet to come. For an empire built on the sacred dance of light and shadow, few events held as much spiritual significance and terrifying portent as a total eclipse. But imagine not just a temporary obscuring of the suns, but a cataclysmic, unprecedented celestial event. The Great Eclipse, a sustained, profound darkening that plunged your world into an unnatural gloom for not just hours, but for weeks, pushing your civilization to the very brink of spiritual and physical collapse. The warnings came subtly at first, whispers among the Chronos priests poring over the elder reflections. Faint, recurring patterns of deepening darkness, previously unseen anomalies in the celestial charts. They spoke of a rare alignment, a convergence of celestial bodies that would cast a shadow of unprecedented duration. Initially, the High Council dismissed some of the more dire predictions as alarmism, believing in the inherent balance of the cosmos. But as the calculations grew more insistent, the fear began to spread. You, as a citizen, feel the growing apprehension. The air itself seems to thicken, taking on a strange, heavy quality. The days begin to feel shorter, the light subtly dimmer, even before the alignment truly begins. The twin suns, usually vibrant, appear muted, almost sickly, as if struggling against an unseen force. An ominous quiet descends upon the cities, the bustling markets becoming hushed, the rhythmic clang of artisans' hammers growing less frequent. Then it begins. Slowly, inexorably, the shadow encroaches. You watch, along with thousands of others, from the temple courtyards, your eyes protected by specially crafted dark lenses made from volcanic glass. The first sun, then the second, begins to disappear behind the colossal dark disk of the aligning celestial body. It's not a gradual dimming, it's an active, predatory consumption of light. The temperature drops sharply, unnaturally, chilling you to the bone. The atmosphere, once vibrant with the desert's energy, becomes heavy, oppressive. As the last sliver of sunlight vanishes, a profound, absolute darkness descends. Not the comforting darkness of night, filled with stars and moonlight, but a suffocating, unnatural gloom, a void that seems to press in on you from all sides. The great mirror in the Sun Temple, once a beacon of reflected divinity, becomes an abyss, absorbing all light, reflecting only a terrifying, formless blackness. Panic, barely contained, begins to erupt. The carefully constructed harmony of your society, built on the duality of light and shadow, is shattered by the prolonged absence of one. The traditional rituals for eclipse, designed for temporary phenomena, prove woefully inadequate. The chants of the priests, meant to reassure, now sound desperate, almost pathetic, lost in the overwhelming gloom. The consequences are immediate and brutal. Without the constant guidance of the suns, your intricate irrigation systems, reliant on solar evaporation and specific light cues for water flow, fail. Crops, already struggling, wither and die in the sudden, prolonged cold. The desert's hidden fauna, accustomed to light, become disoriented or die of exposure. Food becomes scarce, then non-existent. The populace, psychologically unprepared for such a profound and enduring darkness, begins to suffer. Disorientation sets in. People stumble in the streets, their internal compasses utterly useless. The air, once filled with a faint scent of incense, is replaced by the grim aroma of fear, of desperation, of unwashed bodies. You huddle with your family in your home, the small flickering oil lamp a precious, inadequate defense against the consuming darkness outside. The Shadow Lords, those who worshipped pure darkness, initially saw this as their triumph, a divine validation of their beliefs. They emerged from their lightless caverns, reveling in the universal gloom, attempting to assert their dominance. But even they soon realized the horror of absolute, unending darkness. Their bodies, accustomed to a balanced environment, began to weaken. Their minds, seeking order in chaos, found only an abyss. Even their esoteric shadow magic, which relied on the contrast with light, became impotent in the face of universal blackness. The keepers of the unseen, the spiritual backbone of the empire, struggled desperately. They turned to the elder reflections, but the ancient mirrors, devoid of significant light, remained stubbornly dark, offering no guidance, no prophecies. It was as if the cosmos itself had ceased to communicate, withdrawing its divine reflection. Some keepers, overwhelmed by the spiritual trauma, succumbed to madness, babbling about the end of all reflection, the ultimate triumph of the void. Others, demonstrating incredible resilience, used their profound knowledge of light and shadow to create new forms of illumination, desperately trying to pierce the gloom, to restore some semblance of balance. They concocted glowing mineral pastes, harnessed the bioluminescent properties of rare desert fungi, anything to provide a flicker of hope. The unity of the empire fractured. Without clear guidance from the keepers, and with their traditional food sources obliterated, cities turned on each other. Raids for dwindling supplies became common. The blades of reflected light, now struggling to see their enemies or even their own formations, found their tactics useless. The delicate balance of their weapons, designed to reflect and absorb, was meaningless in the all-encompassing darkness. They fought in desperate, brutal brawls, their discipline dissolving into primal self-preservation. Weeks turned into an eternity. The great eclipse, intended by some unknown cosmic force to be a brief celestial dance, became a prolonged, agonizing siege against the very existence of your civilization. Hope dwindled. Despair became a constant companion. The very essence of what it meant to be a part of the empire that worshipped mirrors and shadows was dissolving in the oppressive, eternal night. You felt your spirit shrinking, your inner light dimming, as the world outside became a canvas of unending black. The great celestial event, once a source of awe, became the harbinger of ruin, a profound, chilling demonstration of the universe's indifferent power to extinguish the very light your people held sacred. The great eclipse was not just an event. It was a wound, a scar etched onto the collective soul of your empire. When, after what felt like an eternity, the celestial body finally began its slow, reluctant retreat, and the first tentative slivers of sunlight pierced the profound gloom, the world you emerged into was irrevocably broken. The retreat into obscurity was not a choice, but a desperate, agonizing struggle for survival, a fracturing of a once unified vision into desperate, scattered fragments. Imagine that first weak dawn. The light, when it finally returned, felt alien, almost painful to your light-deprived eyes. The land was a wasteland. The intricate irrigation systems lay shattered, choked with dust and dead vegetation. The vibrant cities, once bustling centers of reflected light, were now ghost towns, many abandoned, others filled with the gaunt, silent figures of survivors, their faces etched with trauma, their eyes hollow. The air, no longer heavy with dread, was thick with the stench of death and decay. The social fabric of the empire had disintegrated. The High Council, its authority shattered by the prolonged silence of the elder reflections, its members depleted by famine and despair, was powerless. The keepers of the unseen, those who survived, were themselves profoundly broken, their spiritual compasses spinning wildly in the aftermath of such a profound cosmic betrayal. How could they interpret a world where the sacred duality had been so violently disrupted? Their wisdom, once absolute, was now deeply suspect. People scattered. The famine was too severe, the destruction too widespread, to maintain centralized authority. Clans and families, driven by the primal urge for survival, began to abandon the ruined cities, seeking whatever sustenance they could find in the ravaged desert. You were part of this exodus, your steps slow and heavy, your heart a leaden weight in your chest, leaving behind generations of history, of shared belief, etched into the very stones of the abandoned temples. The sacred mirrors, once meticulously cared for, were now shattered, defaced, or simply left behind, their polished surfaces dulled by neglect, reflecting only dust and sorrow. Some survivors, in their desperation, even used fragments of obsidian mirrors as crude tools or weapons, a stark, agonizing perversion of their sacred purpose. The shadow silk, once a symbol of subtle elegance, was now scavenged for warmth, its light-absorbing qualities merely practical. The retreat was complete. The once mighty empire that worshipped mirrors and shadows had fractured, dissolved, and been consumed by the vast, unforgiving desert. You are among the last generation to hold true memories of its grandeur, a living shard of a shattered reflection. Your life is now one of wandering, of searching for remnants, for traces of a past that feels both intimately familiar and impossibly distant. Imagine your days. They are spent under the same twin suns, but they feel different now. The light no longer carries the same spiritual resonance. It's just light, harsh and indifferent. The shadows are just shadows, long and cool, offering respite from the heat, not profound meaning. Your people, the descendants of the once proud empire, are few, scattered in small nomadic groups, struggling to eke out an existence. They remember fragments, whispered stories, distorted rituals, but the true understanding, the deep philosophical insight, is largely gone. You might carry a small, precious shard of obsidian, a piece of a once grand mirror, now dulled by countless sandstorms, its edges rough and chipped. You look into its imperfect surface, seeing your own gaunt face, the weariness in your eyes, but also a faint echo of the pride, the wisdom, the reverence that defined your ancestors. It's not a perfect reflection, but it's your reflection, a testament to your lineage. The cities of the empire are now ruins, their once proud architecture eroded by wind and sand. You wander through these skeletal remains, your footsteps muffled by drifts of sand that have reclaimed the sacred courtyards and meditation chambers. The grand mirrors in the Sun Temple are cracked, some shattered entirely, their surfaces pitted and opaque, reflecting nothing but the relentless passage of time. The complex systems of louvers and lenses are broken, rusted, frozen in place, their purpose utterly lost to the elements. You might find a discarded fragment of shadow silk, its once lustrous black now faded to a dull gray, its intricate weave unraveling. Or a piece of a ceremonial instrument, a flute adorned with tarnished, reflective metal, incapable of producing the shimmering tones it once did. Each artifact is a shard of memory, a faint whisper of what once was, stirring a deep ache within you for a world irrevocably lost. The younger generations, born into this fragmented existence, view these ruins with a mixture of reverence and practicality. They might use a piece of polished stone from an ancient temple to sharpen a tool, or repurpose a section of reflective wall to funnel heat into a makeshift dwelling. They see the remnants of the empire not as sacred objects to be worshipped, but as useful materials to be salvaged, a grim testament to how far the spiritual understanding has fallen. The keepers of the unseen as a unified order no longer exist. Those few who still hold fragments of the ancient knowledge are solitary figures, hermits living in remote caves, or wandering sages who occasionally visit the scattered settlements, offering cryptic advice or performing simplified, almost forgotten rituals for a meager meal. They are seen less as spiritual guides and more as eccentric relics of a bygone era. Their language, once precise and nuanced in its description of light and shadow, is now archaic, its deeper meanings lost to a populace struggling with basic survival. The traditions persist but in diluted forms. A child might still be given a small, polished stone on their naming day, but the deep philosophical significance of the personal reflection is lost. It's merely a family tradition, a charm for good luck. People still seek refuge in shadows from the scorching sun, but the understanding of shadow as a sacred counterpoint to light, a realm of the unseen, is gone, replaced by simple pragmatism. The outsiders, those who once clashed with the empire, now occasionally visit the ruins, seeking curiosities, archaeological treasures, or simply marveling at the strange, light-sculpted structures. They interpret the mirrored walls and shadowed chambers not as expressions of profound spiritual belief, but as peculiar architectural whims, or perhaps as remnants of some forgotten, eccentric king's opulent palace. They see the shattered obsidian as volcanic glass, nothing more. Your own memories are like fragmented reflections, shimmering, then fading. You remember the communal chanting during Zenith, the profound silence of Nadir. You recall the feeling of being bathed in pure, reflected sunlight, the comforting embrace of deep shadow. But these memories are increasingly solitary, unshared by a generation that never knew that world. You try to pass them on, to tell the stories, to explain the deeper meanings, but the words often fall flat, met with polite incomprehension or the blank stare of minds preoccupied with the immediate needs of survival. This is the true meaning of a lost empire. Not just fallen cities but a lost way of seeing, a lost way of being. The very essence of its existence, its unique perception of light and shadow, has retreated into obscurity, leaving behind only the physical remnants, the shards of memory, that whisper of a profound spiritual legacy that the modern world can no longer truly grasp. You are a bridge to a vanished truth, a fragile link to a unique form of human experience, a testament to the impermanence of even the most deeply held beliefs when confronted with cosmic indifference and the relentless march of time. Now, as the last faint echoes of that lost empire settle into the quiet chambers of your mind, let's return, slowly, gently, to your own time, your own space. Feel the soft comfort of your bed, the familiar weight of your blankets, the steady hum of your modern world. The journey through the empire that worshipped mirrors and shadows may be over, but its lingering afterglow, its profound insights, can still touch your present reality in unexpected ways. You've witnessed a civilization that built its entire existence on the delicate balance of light and darkness, on the profound power of reflection. You felt the harsh desert sun, the chilling embrace of shadow, the awe of seeing your own face, not as a mundane image but as a divine manifestation. You've experienced a world where every glint, every flicker, every deepening gloom held sacred meaning, where perception itself was a form of worship. Contrast that with your life now. How often do you truly see your reflection? Is it a quick glance in a bathroom mirror, a fleeting check of your appearance, a self-critical assessment? Or do you sometimes, just sometimes, gaze into it and wonder about the person staring back, about the myriad experiences and emotions that flicker in your eyes? For the people of that lost empire, their reflection was a daily dialogue with their soul, a constant reminder of who they were and who they aspired to be. They believed their inner truth was manifested outwardly, visible to discerning eyes. What truth, you might ask yourself, does your own reflection reveal? And what of shadows? In your world, shadows are often fleeting inconveniences, places where things are hidden, or simply an absence of light. You turn on a lamp, banishing them instantly. But in the empire of mirrors and shadows, darkness was not an enemy, It was a sacred counterpoint, a realm of introspection, of mystery, of the unseen. It was where ancestors resided, where secrets were kept, where the soul could retreat from the overwhelming brilliance of the visible world. Do you ever let the shadows linger, truly experiencing the quiet introspection they can offer? Or do you always reach for the light switch, eager to dispel the unknown? Think about the sheer discipline, the profound spiritual commitment it took to live in such a world. The meticulous polishing of mirrors, the careful manipulation of light, the constant awareness of how their actions cast their own shadow signature on the world. It wasn't about rigid rules, but about an inner harmony, a congruence between intention and action. In your fast-paced, often superficial world, how much attention do you pay to your own inner reflections, to the subtle dances of truth and illusion in your own life? The empire faced its ultimate challenge when it encountered cultures that did not share its worldview, that valued brute force over subtle reflection, that saw the world purely through utilitarian eyes. It shattered their spiritual certainty, revealing their vulnerability. This is a stark reminder that even the most deeply held beliefs can be challenged, sometimes brutally, by realities that exist outside our own carefully constructed perceptions. It's a lesson in humility, in the vast, bewildering diversity of human experience. Their downfall, the Great Eclipse, was a cosmic catastrophe, a profound disruption of their sacred balance. It stripped away their understanding, their identity, leaving behind only shards of memory. Yet even in its loss there is a lesson. It reminds us of the fragility of even the greatest civilizations, the impermanence of all things, and the enduring power of cosmic forces beyond our control. It teaches us that what defines us, what we hold most sacred, can be taken away, leaving us to navigate a changed, often unrecognizable world. But even from the ruins of that empire, a lingering afterglow remains. It's the subtle understanding that the world is more than what meets the eye, that there are layers of meaning beneath the surface. It's the quiet invitation to observe, truly observe, the interplay of light and shadow in your own environment, to see the beauty in a dappled sunbeam, the mystery in a deepening dusk. It's the whisper that your own reflection, far from being just a surface image, holds depths of truth waiting to be explored. As you drift off to sleep, let this story resonate within you. Let the faint glint of ancient mirrors, the silent dance of forgotten shadows, remind you that there are countless ways to see the world, and that sometimes, the most profound truths are found not in what is overtly stated, but in the subtle, shimmering depths of reflection, and the enigmatic, powerful embrace of the unseen. May your dreams be filled with vivid light and profound shadows, and may you awaken with a renewed sense of wonder for the hidden layers of your own world. Sleep well, seeker of stories.